Purpose is the compass that gives direction to courage. Without purpose, courage becomes reckless, aimless, and often destructive. But with purpose, courage becomes powerful, anchored in meaning, directed by vision, and fueled by something far greater than fear. It's one thing to be bold for the sake of being bold. It's another thing entirely to stand tall for something that transcends yourself. When a man discovers his purpose, when he truly understands what he was born to do, everything changes. His doubts don't disappear, but they lose their grip. His fears don't vanish, but they stop defining his path. Purpose breathes life into the bones of bravery. It turns quiet people into voices for justice. It transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary movements. Purpose is what made a preacher from Atlanta speak to a nation and shake its conscience. It's what made countless souls march, bleed, and believe in the face of fire hoses, dogs, and jail cells, not because they wanted to suffer, but because they knew their suffering meant something. That's the power of purpose. Purpose is not something we stumble into by chance. It is something we discover when we ask ourselves the hard questions, when we reflect, when we wrestle with truth, when we look out at a broken world and say, "What part of this am I willing to make right?" You see, real purpose doesn't always look glamorous. It's not about applause, wealth, or recognition. Sometimes it's about sacrifice. Sometimes it's about standing alone. Sometimes it's about choosing what's right even when no one is watching. But always, always, it's about courage. Because when you know why you're here, you begin to live differently. You speak with clarity. You walk with intention. You stop chasing everything and start fighting for something. Courage, when guided by purpose, becomes a force that no obstacle can hold back. It gives rise to movements, builds communities, tears down walls, and raises up bridges. It silences excuses and awakens action. It pulls you out of bed when the world feels heavy. It keeps you going when the crowd turns away. And the beauty of it is this: you don't have to be famous, rich, or powerful to walk in your purpose. You just have to be willing to look deep inside yourself, willing to listen to that quiet voice that says, "This matters," willing to face the fear, the doubt, the resistance, and keep moving anyway. That's courage with direction. That's bravery with a map. That's the kind of courage that rewrites stories and redirects history. Purpose does not remove the danger. It does not eliminate the risk, but it makes the danger worth facing, the risk worth taking. Because when your life is tied to a cause greater than your comfort, then even in the darkest hours, your light still shines. People may not understand it. They may question you, criticize you, or even walk away. But when your courage is rooted in purpose, you are no longer driven by the need for approval. You are driven by the call to make a difference. Comfort zones are the graveyards of conviction. They are the silent killers of dreams, the quiet prisons where potential goes to sleep and never wakes up. In the comfort zone, everything feels safe, predictable, familiar. But nothing grows. Nothing bold is born there. Nothing world-changing rises from a place where risk is avoided and fear is obeyed. And yet, too many people settle there. They build lives around the illusion of security, mistaking stillness for peace, mistaking routine for purpose, mistaking silence for wisdom. The truth is, every conviction, every breakthrough, every revolution of the soul begins at the edge of comfort. That edge is not a place of ease. It's a place of friction. It's where doubts scream louder, where fear grips tighter, and where resistance becomes real. But it's also where courage starts to breathe. It's where faith gets tested and strengthened. It's where your true voice starts to rise. If you want to stand for something, if you want your life to echo beyond your years, you will have to leave the comfort zone behind. The comfort zone tells you to stay quiet when you should speak. It whispers it's not your battle, when your heart knows it is. It keeps you small, polite, and afraid. Conviction, on the other hand, tells you to rise even when it's inconvenient, to speak even when your voice shakes, to move forward even when you stand alone. Conviction is the fire inside that refuses to be put out by the cold winds of doubt. But it cannot burn inside the walls of complacency. It needs air, it needs challenge, it needs the space to grow, even if that space feels uncomfortable. Growth never happens in the soft places. It happens in the stretching, in the wrestling, in the tension between what is and what could be. The people who change the world are not the ones who stayed safe. They are the ones who were willing to be uncomfortable for what they believed in. They are the ones who walked through fire, not because they enjoyed the heat, but because they knew the flame would purify them, shape them, and prepare them to carry the weight of their calling. Every time you choose comfort over conviction, you shrink your soul just a little. You betray the part of you that was meant to rise, but every time you choose conviction over comfort, even in small ways, you grow, you build muscle, you build courage, you build integrity, and little by little you become the kind of person who can be trusted with greater purpose. There will always be a voice that says, stay where it's safe, but another voice will say, step into the unknown and become who you were meant to be. One voice will keep you quiet, the other will teach you to roar. One will bury your gifts, the other will awaken them. Conviction was never meant to live within the padded walls of safety. It was meant to move, to stretch, to struggle, and to shine. A man without a cause is a shadow without substance. He may walk, talk, and breathe like the rest, but without something to stand for, his life drifts like smoke, visible for a moment, then gone without a trace. A cause gives weight to a man's existence. It gives meaning to his pain, direction to his strength, and a name to his sacrifices. Without it, he becomes a wanderer, easily swayed by the winds of opinion, popularity, and convenience. He may appear successful in the eyes of the world, but deep inside, he knows there is no anchor holding him steady. A cause is not just a goal. It's not just ambition. It's not about making money, building fame, or gaining power. A cause is deeper. It's a mission rooted in truth. It is the belief that there is something in this world worth standing for, something worth defending, something worth giving your time, your gifts, and even your life for. It's the reason great leaders endure prisons, the reason artists paint through poverty, the reason ordinary people rise in extraordinary moments. They are not moved by ego, they are moved by purpose. When a man finds his cause, everything else begins to align. His energy, his talents, his vision, even his pain, all of it finds direction. He no longer chases distractions because he knows what matters most. He stops living for applause and starts living for impact. A man with a cause does not need to shout the loudest. His life speaks louder than words ever could. There is a quiet power in knowing what you stand for. It gives you the ability to endure storms, to outlast trials, to keep going when others fall away. And yet, many avoid the search for a cause. Why? Because it requires honesty. It requires courage. It forces you to look beyond comfort and face the world's brokenness with open eyes. It forces you to see injustice, to feel the pain of others, to ask uncomfortable questions about your role in healing what's been wounded. It is easier to stay a shadow, unattached, uninvolved, unshaken. But that is not what we were made for. We were made to carry light into dark places. We were made to build, to lift, to lead. When you find your cause, you find yourself. You begin to move differently, think differently, live differently. You become a force that cannot be ignored, and not because you're perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because you're driven by something that matters more than fear. A cause gives you clarity when the path is foggy. It gives you strength when the weight feels too heavy. It gives you passion when others are settling for passive. The world is full of shadows, empty noise, empty pursuits, empty lives. But the world is changed by those who dare to live with substance, by those who take their gifts and pour them into something lasting. A man with a cause is dangerous to the status quo because he cannot be bought, silenced, or distracted. He is focused. He is fueled. He is alive in the deepest sense. Sacrifice is the price of significance. There is no greatness without giving something up. No legacy without letting go. Every dream worth chasing, every truth worth telling, every movement that has ever mattered has come at a cost. Too often, we admire the finished product but overlook the pain behind it, the sleepless nights, the missed comforts, the battles fought in silence. But that's where real power lies, in the choices no one sees. In the moments when you could have walked away but didn't. You cannot make a mark on this world by holding tightly to everything. At some point, something must be laid down. Your time, your comfort, your ego, your fears. Sacrifice is the fire that refines vision. It is the process that burns off what's unnecessary so what is essential can shine. When you say yes to a higher purpose, you are also saying no to ease, to convenience, to the path of least resistance. And that is where the transformation begins, not just of your circumstances, but of your character. Sacrifice teaches you discipline. It trains your soul to endure. It stretches your heart to feel more deeply, to serve more selflessly, to rise more boldly. It turns your passion from a spark into a flame that can light the way for others. There is a beauty in sacrifice, not in suffering for its own sake, but in choosing to endure for something that matters more than your momentary pain. Every great leader, every world changer, every name we remember with reverence, they all knew what it meant to lay something down so that something greater could rise. Too often, people want significance without the sacrifice. They want influence without responsibility. They want results without the grind. But the truth is, your impact will only ever be as deep as your willingness to give, because giving is where the heart is revealed. And significance is not about how much you take in this life. It's about how much you pour out. You may have to give up your pride to ask for help. You may have to give up popularity to speak the truth. You may have to give up comfort to stand in the gap for someone who cannot stand for themselves. That's not weakness. That's power under control. That's the strength of someone who knows that what they are building is bigger than their own name. That what they are living for will outlast them. There will be days when sacrifice feels like loss, when it feels like you're falling behind while others seem to be rising. But you are not behind. You are building something real. You are planting roots that will hold when the storms come, because significance does not shout. It shows up day after day with grit and grace. And when the time comes to stand for what you believe, when the moment arrives that tests your resolve, you will not need to scramble to find your strength. It will already be there, built in the quiet hours, forged in the fires of sacrifice, shaped by every decision you made to put purpose above pleasure. Legacy begins where fear ends. As long as fear is in control, legacy remains a dream deferred, a possibility unlived. Fear builds walls around potential. It whispers reasons to wait, to shrink, to doubt. It convinces us to settle for safety instead of stepping into purpose. But legacy does not live in safety. It lives in risk, in boldness, in the decision to do something today that echoes far beyond tomorrow. The ones who leave a mark on history are not the ones who played it safe. They are the ones who stared fear in the face and moved forward anyway. Fear is natural, but it was never meant to be in the driver's seat. It may ride along, it may speak up from time to time, but when fear takes the wheel, it drives us away from the very life we were meant to live. Legacy is the result of choices made in courage. It's born in those moments when you decide that your mission matters more than your comfort, that the voices you're trying to uplift matter more than the voices trying to silence you, that future generations deserve more than your excuses. They deserve your action. You don't build legacy by avoiding what's hard. You build it by choosing what's right, even when it costs you something. You build it in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you take the high road, when you do the difficult thing, when you keep going after the spotlight fades. Legacy isn't about fame, it's about faithfulness, it's about consistency, it's about showing up day after day with your values intact, your passion lit, and your hands willing to work. The world doesn't remember those who hid behind their fear. It remembers those who showed up with trembling hands and steady hearts. Every movement that reshaped the future began with someone who said, "Enough is enough," and meant it. Someone who stood when it was easier to sit. Someone who acted when silence would have been more comfortable. That is where legacy is born, in motion, in truth, in the refusal to let fear define the story. Fear tells you that you are not ready, not worthy, not enough. But legacy answers back, "You were made for this." Legacy is not some distant reward for perfect people. It's built every day by ordinary people who choose to live with extraordinary purpose. It begins the moment you decide to live not just for yourself, but for something beyond you. Something higher, something deeper, something eternal. Fear will always have a voice, but legacy only grows when you stop letting that voice lead your life. It grows when you say yes to challenges you don't yet feel equipped to face. When you speak with a voice you didn't know you had. When you show up in rooms that once intimidated you, not because you're fearless, but because your purpose is stronger than your fear. Every step you take in defiance of fear adds another brick to the foundation of your legacy. Every time you act in courage, you stretch the reach of your influence, and what you build in courage today becomes the inheritance for someone else tomorrow. To live fully, we must love something deeply enough to defend it fiercely. A life without fierce love is a life half-lived, safe, quiet, and forgettable. But when you fall in love with something greater than yourself, when you attach your soul to a cause, a people, a truth that cannot be compromised, that's when you begin to live with fire. That's when every step, every choice, every heartbeat carries meaning. Love gives you roots, but defense gives you wings. It's not enough to admire something from a distance. At some point, you have to stand up and protect what matters. There is a sacred kind of strength that comes from love, not the shallow kind that wavers with the wind, but the kind that grips your heart and refuses to let go. It's the kind of love that kept mothers marching even when they were met with hatred. It's the kind of love that built movements, protected dignity, and preserved hope in the darkest of nights. When you love deeply, you can no longer be passive. You can no longer sit quietly while injustice thrives, while truth is trampled, while people you care for suffer in silence. Living fully means you've found something that stirs your soul and awakens your voice. It means you've traded convenience for conviction. You no longer ask, is this easy? You ask, is this right? That shift changes everything. It takes ordinary people and turns them into warriors of compassion, builders of peace, defenders of dreams. Love is what makes you stay when walking away would be simpler. Love is what gives your fight purpose. It's easy to say you care, but the test is in the moments when caring comes with a cost. When standing up means standing alone. When defending your values risks your comfort, your relationships, or your reputation. Those are the moments where true life begins, when you stop being a spectator and start becoming a steward of what's been entrusted to you. Whether it's your family, your faith, your freedom, or your community, living fully means you're willing to guard it with courage and grace. There is no power like the power of someone who loves with intention and defends with integrity. That person becomes a light in a world that often feels dim. They become a voice of clarity in a time of noise and confusion. Their actions echo because they come from a place that is real, raw, and rooted. That's the kind of life that cannot be ignored. That's the kind of presence that shifts atmospheres. This kind of fierce love is not aggressive or violent. It is steady, committed, and unshakable. It listens deeply and acts boldly. It doesn't seek revenge, but it refuses to remain silent in the face of wrong. When you find something you love enough to defend, you also find your courage, your strength, your resilience. You begin to see your life as more than a pursuit of happiness. It becomes a mission to protect what is good, to fight for what is right, and to serve what is greater than yourself. That is how a full life is lived, not just in joy, but in justice. Not just in peace, but in purpose. Not just in love, but in the strength to guard that love when it's under attack.